Hey guys, Ben again, back here this week in the office. How'd you go with your homework last week? I gave you a quick homework assignment to identify an area in your life where you could use some self-control. Remember we talked about even though all things are permitted, some things aren't good, like eating chocolate 3 meals a day, every day for the rest of your life. Permitted, not good. I think we referenced staying up late, or things like swearing, or what you wear, or what you listen to, things like that. I gave you some homework, which was to identify an area which you needed a bit more self-control, and then to do it, to have some more self-control. How'd you do? I hope you did well. I know for me, it is an ongoing process, identifying things that need to be controlled more, and I try that each week. Phone usage is one of those things I'm constantly working on to use more self-control, to not use it as much. So hope that you found something to do last week. This week, we are talking about tools. Not in the Urban Dictionary sense, like, you tool! We're talking about tools as in, like that. There's a hammer. I remember when I was a recent college graduate, that makes me about 21, I actually moved out to Hawaii, and living in Hawaii had to get a job, and I ended up getting a job in construction. And when I got the job, they said, all right, well, you'll need a hammer and a tool belt. And I thought, no problem. I will go to Lowe's and get a hammer and a tool belt. And went to Lowe's and got a hammer. It wasn't this hammer, but it was a lot like this hammer. And I'll explain what I mean in a second. I showed up on the job site, fresh college graduate, very little construction experience. They put me up on the roof of a 2-story building. And my job was to hammer in these boards. They had a crane lifting up the boards and sticking them in place. And I was supposed to have the nails in my tool belt and use my hammer to hang over the edge of this house. So the house sort of stopped, edge came over. My job was to bend out, hang over, and nail in these boards to all these roofs. They had it was a construction project for a commercial thing, and they had 50 houses, and my job was to nail them all in. And guys, I got made fun of for the size of my hammer. If you notice, this hammer is actually quite small. If you know anything about hammers, there's my hand. There's the hammer. It's almost the size of my hand. Not a great hammer. I didn't have that exact hammer, but it was like that in their eyes. They looked at my tiny little hammer, and the hammer was clean and unused, and my tool belt, which only had one pocket, all the experienced construction guys had a hammer 3 times the size, and their tool belt was dirty and used and had all sorts of things in it that I didn't have. So I learned a lot that day about hammers and tool belts, and I learned that sometimes you need to have a bigger tool. Sometimes you need to learn from other people. You need to grow up and upgrade your tool belt. And I did that. I went right back to Lowe's the next day, got myself like a 20 or 30 ounce hammer, something that felt heavy in the hand. Got myself a 5-6 pocket tool belt, filled it with all sorts of nails and clamps and earplugs and glasses and stuff, and came back that next day ready to go. So I upgraded my tool belt. So we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about your tool belt, not literally, not the tools that you have in your house, but the tools you have in your heart. Whether you know it or not, you have been given a toolbox. Most often, more likely than not, it is by your parents or your guardian. Whoever's looking after you has given you a toolbox. And in that toolbox are relationship tools. And you learn them when you watch your mom and dad interact when they're having a good day, when you watch your mom and dad interact when they're having a bad day. You watch when someone's on the couch and they don't want to get up and they call out to the other person, "Can you get me a drink?" And they don't move a muscle. And you watch when one of your parents rolls their eyes and the other parent doesn't even know. They're like, "Have you done the dishes yet?" That's part of your tool belt. You learn how to relate to other people. Maybe your brother and sister are teaching you how to have a relationship with boyfriends or girlfriends. What to watch on TV. Your parents are giving you a toolbox. Your Friends are giving you a toolbox, and in your toolkit, that's what you will take one day to your own relationship, whether that's dating or marriage. And unfortunately, some people find out, like I did when I arrived at the job site of that construction job, that their tools are too small. Their tools are not up for the job. So one example would be, you guys, if you never figured out, you haven't been given good tools in terms of arguing. Arguing is actually a really important part of relationships and then marriage. You need to be able to argue in a way that is healthy, that is safe for both people, that is respectful, because you can argue. I don't know if you actually know that. Maybe your toolkit doesn't have arguing in it yet, but you need to be able to argue in a way that is respectful towards both people, allows you to make progress towards a win-win situation, and usually it takes a lot of humility, as in, tell me what you really mean, here's what I really mean, and I really want to fix this problem with you in a mature way. You have to have that in your toolkit. If it's yelling and screaming and breaking things and storming off and having a few beers to cool off, I would suggest that if that's in your toolkit, you have the wrong tool. You have one of these guys, a teeny tiny hammer, and when it comes to doing the work in your marriage, in your relationship, you haven't got the right tools. So here's a couple of scriptures that support this. 1 Corinthians, which is written by the Apostle Paul, who, as most of you might know, used to be named Saul. And when he was Saul, he had a terrible toolkit. It wasn't just too small or the wrong kind. It was the worst toolkit that you could possibly have. He used to persecute Christians. He hated Christians and used to support them being captured, put in jail, tortured, and even killed. So Paul upgraded his toolkit. And here's what he says, 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. As you guys might know, the Bible says that God is love. So here's what he says about love. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, and it keeps no record of wrongs. Those are tools in your toolkit that you need to have by the time you get married. So between now and then, you're supposed to be picking up tools for your toolkit about not being envious, not boasting, don't be proud, don't be selfish, don't be easily angered, don't remind your partner when they've done the wrong thing over and over and over. Those should be in your toolkit. So then we move on. 1 Corinthians 13:11, Paul says this, "When I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child. But when I grew up, I put away childish things." And what's he saying? He's saying he, like everybody, was a child at one stage, but then he grew up. He increased his toolkit. He got better tools. He learned more, in his case, about God and humility and love and sacrifice. What are the things in your life that you learned as a child, or maybe you're a child now? What are the things that you need to grow up from to become a grown-up? I heard it said that everybody gets old, but not everybody grows up. And that produces something which I call kidults. And guys, the worst thing that you can be is a kidult. You're 45, 50, you look old, you've got a beard maybe, losing your hair like me. You're getting older in years, but you're not patient, you're not kind, you can't argue, you can't praise other people, you can't have a healthy argument, you can't be around anybody who's any different than you. You just only accept people who agree. Your toolkit stinks. You've got the one pocket on your belt, and the only thing in there is your own opinion. Your toolkit needs to be upgraded. So guys, you might have guessed it already by now, but my homework for you this week is think about those around you. Think about your parents. Think about if you have an older brother and sister, or somebody that is influencing you in your life. Maybe it's your coach, maybe it's a teacher, a principal, or pastor. What are they teaching you that isn't great? Be honest. Look at the people around you and the way that they have relationships, the way they spend money, what they eat, what they watch on Netflix, what they listen to. What is in your toolkit that needs to be upgraded? I want you to try to identify something you see in other people that isn't great, that you want to upgrade by the time you're a grown-up, by the time you are not a child anymore. So that's one, identify it. Number two, identify someone else, two-part assignment this week, who does have it, who is doing it right, that you know. Maybe it's exactly some of the people I mentioned, older brother or sister, youth pastor, neighbor, coach, teacher. Surely you can look, seek, and find someone who has what you want and try to copy them. Just ask them questions. Say, how'd you get there? How'd you do that? What is that thing? How do you argue? How do you spend money? What do you eat? How do you get so strong? How do you have so much energy? What time do you go to bed? What do you watch on Netflix? Ask these questions, you guys. And that whole process is training you to be a grown-up, to put away childish things one day, to ready yourself to be a grown-up, to be old and wise and mature. And that is honoring to God, and it's a blessing to those around you. So guys, good luck this week. Identify things in your toolkit that need to be upgraded. God bless you. Have a great week. See ya.